Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody is happy with the situation that we find ourselves in. This is all being driven by an economy that we're still struggling with, and it's affecting all sectors of the economy. It's affecting all regions of the state. Every family is being affected in some way, and it's having repercussions in everything that we do. So the school's budget is a victim of the economy, and we saw projections and possibilities of public schools being cut, $150 to $1 million or more. This budget cut schools about $128 million. So it's less than what we thought we might have to endure, but it's still unprecedented, and it's going to be very difficult to manage. But we were able to focus on some priorities that I think will help minimize the consequences that this budget will have as far as it relates to student achievement. Well, we've taken a number of areas where we funded schools for specific purposes, and we removed those purposes, if you will, from those dollars, and move those dollars to discretionary funding so that districts can then make some of those tough choices between textbooks and technology, between maybe funding field trips and not funding field trips, those kinds of things, giving districts just a lot more discretion. That's what they are asking for in order to deal with these unprecedented cuts. And so we did our best to provide them with flexibility, but at the same time make sure that we're preserving student-teacher contact time and making sure that we don't pass a budget that forces our classrooms to explode, in size. We've accomplished that. The budget that is passed and the intent language that went with that budget means that we should have just as many teachers next year as we have this year. Unfortunately, they will all have to probably work for a little less money, but we shouldn't have fewer teachers, which means all teachers get to keep their jobs, which is important, but it also means that our classroom sizes remain manageable, and that's critical. And the other thing we've done is we've preserved some key programs that are helping some of our students who struggle the most. For example, we preserved the programs that help students who are struggling in reading in the early grades. We've preserved the programs that help all students who are struggling in math. And we've preserved programs that give those advanced students additional opportunities so they can meet their full potential. Those kinds of remedial programs and advanced programs and opportunities were critical if we're going to keep student achievement moving forward. And fortunately, we were able to preserve some of those programs also. I think they'll approach it like everybody else in the private sector that's working for less money. I think they'll approach it like every other state employee that is working for less money. You kind of cringe. You don't like it. It's uncomfortable. But we're grateful to have a job. And when we recognize so many of our friends and neighbors and even family do not have jobs, and we realize that even though we're going to work for less money for a period of time, that we still have a responsibility, and the responsibility of being a teacher is one of the most important responsibilities in our society. And so I'm sure our teachers are going to continue to do the great work that they've done in the past. Well, it is going to have an impact on student achievement, and I've said it from day one that this will have an impact on student achievement, and we shouldn't try to sugarcoat this. But that we can minimize that impact if we're very careful and strategic on where we cut and how we cut. So there's no doubt that this is going to have an impact, but I think we've crafted a budget that will have a minimum impact. The fact that Idaho has led the nation 2 years in a row in how our students are performing academically and in meeting our academic goals, we can remain a national leader if we're very strategic on where we cut and how we cut, and that's what we've tried to accomplish. So I think as far as setting people's minds at ease, what I tell them is we're asking the adults in education to sacrifice a little bit more for a little bit longer, but that there is a brighter day and it's not far off, and that this too shall pass, and when it does, that we'll be able to restore the funding that's been cut, and we'll be able to look back and realize that because of our best efforts, we were able to keep our education system moving forward, and we were able to minimize the impact that this economy is going to have on student achievement. Well, I think there's definitely signs and indications that we're on the right track and going in the right direction. 2 years ago in Idaho, only 25 or 26% of our schools met our academic goals that we set for them. Currently, 66% of our schools make those goals. That's a tremendous increase from 26% to 66%. And Idaho has led the nation 2 years in a row now in the percentage of our schools making our academic goals. There's only 8 states in the nation now whose students are performing better on a national math assessment. In the last 2 years, we've gone from 66% of our third graders reading at grade level to 76%. So all of those indicators that we have tell us we're going in the right direction and we're on the right track. But it also tells us we have a long ways to go. Well, first, you have to give credit to the teachers in the classroom, because that's where education happens. It's in the classroom between the teacher and the student. But what we try to do at the state level is provide teachers and students with those tools they need in order for a student to meet their full potential. It's absolutely critical that if a student is struggling in math, that we give them the assistance they need immediately. We can't tell them you're going to have to wait for the economy to improve before you can get the assistance you need. Or if a student is struggling in reading, or if a student needs advanced opportunities, it's important that we provide that extra assistance immediately. That's what we've done the last few years. Since I've taken office, we have focused additional resources into the classroom to provide remediation for students who struggle. The math initiative, the reading initiative, the ISAT remediation dollars, all of those have played a critical role in taking our students and our schools from performing at 26% effectiveness now to a 66% effectiveness. So, it's a combination of those great teachers, but also those programs that are giving teachers and students the tools they need in the classroom to be successful. Well, I've been appointed to serve on a national committee that is advising the White House and Congress on reauthorization of No Child Left Behind. And the direction we got from the President and the Secretary of Education is they want to keep the core principles of No Child Left Behind. In other words, high levels of accountability, expand choice in public education, test every child, and hold the system of education accountable for those results. Where I think you're going to see a focus shift, or a shift in focus, is that rather than just measuring students in schools based on how many students can pass a test, let's look at how much academic growth a student has had the year they've been in that school. And that's a better measure of how successful a school and a teacher are being. And I embrace that approach. Also, I think you'll see a focus on trying to provide more flexibility to rural states like Idaho, where No Child Left Behind was built around an urban model, and then there was a lot of changes and flexibility brought to it to try to make it work better in a rural state like Idaho. It's time now to just provide that flexibility that's currently not there in No Child Left Behind. I think No Child Left Behind served a good purpose early on, but now it's become a stumbling block to future progress. And so it's time to go through reauthorization. And everyone knows that I'm a conservative Republican, but I have to give President Obama and Secretary Duncan credit for the focus they're taking on education, expanding choice in public education, more charter schools, pay for performance for teachers. All of those things are things that not too long ago were viewed as only Republican partisan issues. Now they've become bipartisan, and so I think that's good for education. I think there will be, and then the debate is how much more is necessary. I think as long as the federal government is going to continue to spend $100 billion a year on public education and send it out to the states, that there has to be accountability for those dollars. And if you want to paint that accountability as an unfunded mandate, then that can be part of the debate. But as long as Idaho continues to receive $400 million a year from the federal government for our K-12 schools, then there's obviously going to be some expectations from the federal government. And whether it's a federal tax dollar, a state tax dollar, or a local tax dollar, it still comes from the same pocket, from the taxpayer, and it should be spent efficiently, effectively, and there has to be accountability for it, or you shouldn't spend it at all. So I think that debate is yet to happen in the future about any increases in funding. the President Obama has already increased the funding going to the states considerably, and some would argue maybe even too much considering the size of our national debt.